Good morning, dear Dharma friends. I just noticed how lovely to have survived another day with each other. I just noticed I have a very fortuitous camera angle just now that it just doesn't pick up the cauliflower ear pockets, which of course are unsightly and should be ironed, but I never get around to them. So it's perfect that the line is right here. It's dark and rainy here. I am that which takes itself to be Robert Beatty, and I'm here with my beloved pal Jim Dalton. Thanks for being here so dependably, Mr. Jim. I have a new poem. Jennifer found it and sent it to me yesterday. It's a keeper. It's by someone named John Rodell, Roedel. My brain and heart divorced. My brain and heart divorced. If you can find that and stick it in the connections, Jim, it'd be great. Roedel. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago. Over who was to blame about how big a mess I have become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week. And their notes, the notes they send to one another, always say the same thing. This is all your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past, and on Wednesday, my head lists all the times my heart has screwed things up for me. In the future, they blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying, so lately I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Most nights I sneak out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head. I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you're exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There's no yesterday in your lungs. There's no tomorrow there either. There's only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There's only breath, and in that breath you can rest while your heart and head work their relationship out. This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and while my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, and she said, "What took you so long?" Oh, I forgot to push record. Oh, well, here we go. Record.
Recording in progress.
So here we are. We've done this a few times. Getting up a little early, maybe a lot early for some people. Making our way to the Dharma Hall. We've built a sacred place. It's the place where we do the one thing, the practice of going to our lungs. The practice of this, being present. There's nothing really Buddhist or Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim about it. It's the mysterious human capacity to have some influence on what happens in the mind and therefore what happens in the world. And so let us practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 pastures of abiding. Let us notice that there is in fact a body sitting here. Notice that it breathes. It definitely makes contact with the chair or the cushion or the floor. It exists as sensations. There was a moment in something that we call the past when you had just emerged from your mother. Amazing, huh? Spent 9 months being protected by this other body that did everything for us, including breathing. And then there was a moment when the carbon dioxide was building up in your body and a longing, a need, a desperate need started to manifest itself. And then some reflex kicked in and you went gasping inwardly. And then you cried for a while. Very important for the process of the lungs to get well inflated. And so here we are, a few millions of breaths later. And every day, all day long, something really huge happens. Each breath has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness, a decline, and a vanishing. And these sequential events never exist at the same time. The rising of the chest and abdomen don't coexist with the falling. And so this breathing offers us a perfect home base for abiding in the present moment. And of course, there may well be thoughts. There may be streams of thoughts. There may be obsessive thoughts. Thoughts take all kinds of different forms. The energies of the mind can form up into the 5 hindrances, into craving and desire and wanting, or into aversion and disliking, or restlessness, agitation, worry, or sleepy dullness, doubt, sloth and torpor. And doubt is competing belief systems. All of these can become objects of observation. They are all part of the fabric of the dream of human life. making the pilgrimage to the lungs is something we do countless times. It's inevitable that we fall into the dream state, the fantasy life, the trances of everyday life. The song of the self sings itself. I, me, mine, mine, mine. But it isn't a problem. It's nature. Just as nature is also the emergence of mindfulness, the waking up, in which we wake up and then there's presence. Nothing very fancy about it. There is sometimes the fog of delusion is very thick. There are few moments of being awake. Other times, it's effortless to be present and notice the mind thinking a thought here or indulging in emotion somewhere else. The movement of the mind toward wandering, shopping for its distractions, becomes really obvious. And both ends of this polarity are of great importance. We notice the restlessness or the fear. And there's moods, the despair, the hopelessness, the excitement, the confidence. How intimately can awareness be present with this in-breath right now? An in-breath is so much more than one experience. It's really countless experiences. How intimately can awareness be present with one out-breath? This out-breath. To the best of our ability, We allow the body to be like a rock. Being a rock makes all movement obvious. Even the smallest movement to scratch an itch becomes a large event. Sometimes, of course, there are emotions afoot. Just as there are sometimes unpleasant sensations in the body, or pleasant for that matter. If something is persistent, clamors for attention, then we turn toward it with complete openness. If there's depression or anxiety or fear or elation, where do they exist in the body? To come toward, move in on, to be close to something like depression or anxiety takes a quality of firmness in our practice to know we are stable in this upright sitting. It takes some capacity of staying with the breath so that we know we can in fact turn toward these sensations, these thoughts, without getting lost. With physical pain, we move closer and closer to it. We surrender into it. We notice how big it is, how extensive, how much it lasts over time. We move toward it, toward any suffering that there is, and soften. This moment, these emotions are like this. So there is this illumination of that which we experience as the self. Mindfulness shines upon everything without distinction. It's like the sun. And there is a foundation, a container for the entirety of the practice, which is love. And in love, there is room for everything. In love, we wind up giving up all our fixed positions. We love the parts of ourselves that are luminous and open-hearted and kind, and we love the parts of us that are contracted and dark, not yet touched. I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. And the simple mantra, I love you, with your own name at the end. If this is difficult, if the beliefs that are anti-love are too powerful, continue anyway. Imagine yourself as a small child and try saying I love you to that person. Sometimes even that's difficult. And then we love the resistance. Loving doesn't mean liking. It means acknowledging reality. And along the way in our lives, moment to moment, day to day, week to week, there's plenty of suffering, plenty of disappointment, plenty of dreams that never get to be fulfilled, and some that do. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes we have imbalances in our personality, our costuming for the world that result in lots of suffering. And so we have compassion, the willingness to be present with any suffering. When I discover myself to be hurting in any fashion, suffering in any fashion, I aspire to hold myself in sweet, loving compassion. I really intend that. When there's impatience, I hold myself in compassion. When there's irritability or sadness or despair, despondency, I hold myself and all others who have the same experience in compassion. And please now, let us bring awareness into the body where it touches the chair. Let's notice the aliveness in hands and fingers. Notice that it's even possible to wiggle a finger, to pick some finger and move it. Agency. And allowing awareness to open in the chest, in the throat, in the chin and jaw, in the eyes, in the forehead, in the scalp. And noticing the intention to open the eyes and then letting them open. Really present with the phenomenon of seeing. Seeing. Seeing and hearing. Thank you for joining me this morning, for joining us. I have a couple of invitations for you. One is, I mentioned yesterday, and if you're on the listserv, you got it in the listserv, that in early January, Jim and I are doing a 5-day virtual retreat where you would either stay at home or go to some place where you can be cared for uninterrupted more. And it's a 5-day sort of intensive retreat. And there'll be individual interviews and group interviews perhaps, and lots of time to practice. We'll be doing some movement practice in the mornings. Jim will be leading us in some movement practice during the retreat. We'll cover the whole of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, of course. And well, it's really lovely to get away and do a residential retreat somewhere. For some of us, it's financially beyond reach. There is a registration fee for this retreat, which goes to PIMC, but it is a suggested amount, and you can make it as little or as much as you want. So it removes that one barrier. The other invitation is something, the idea for this has just been germinating, and I'm going to go ahead and schedule it. I don't know when, but before Christmas, I'm going to schedule a 2-hour block for a Zoom meeting in which I'm going to play from my Audible account Vanessa Redgrave reading The Year of Magical Thinking. And there'll be no fee for that. It's a commercial product, so we can't have money involved with it at all, which is just fine. So, and it will be an hour and 15 minutes of listening to her, listening to Vanessa Redgrave performing the thoughts, basically, of, I'm forgetting her name, the author, anyway, of the book. And it's the story of her husband dying before her eyes, and then how how much magical thinking there was in that first year. And it's a marvelous, for a meditator, it's just a marvelous description. So I'll get that scheduled soon, and we'll have an evening of that. Oh, and the retreat. If you want to attend the retreat, I urge you to sign up soon. There are 25 places. 10 of them are now filled. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll decide in December, I think your decision will be made for you. So I think that's enough. Anything I'm neglecting, Jimbo?
Just me. I'm going to be online on the 20th of, what is this? November. At any rate, Qigong on the 20th of November from 9 till 1. Join me if you can, even for an hour. It would be, most hours are organized into 30 minutes of silence, 10 or 15 minutes of poetry and reflection, and 10 or 15 minutes of movement. So just that would be a wonderful way to drop into silence and movement and poetry.
Thank you, good sir. So, is there anything that comes to your heart to speak? Your heart, your gut, your mind, your lungs.
Hey, Robert, it's Kathy.
Hello, Kathy.
So, one thing I just want to say one thing, and then I have a request. I'm just kind of excited because I get to spend U.S. Thanksgiving on Vancouver Island in Cowichan Valley with my son and his wife and child, and we'll be up there for about a week. And so, whenever I see you all that are on Vancouver Island, it just makes me feel closer to you. So it's like, yeah, I'm closer to my son. It's sort of this warm feeling. So I just wanted to say that. I'm looking forward to being there.
They look like Canadians, don't they?
They talk like Canadians.
That's true. There's something a little mysterious about them. It's just very interesting.
I love it. There's a qualitative difference. I was up there in August visiting, and definitely I really like it. Anyway, but one thing you said towards the end of the meditation was, in love we give up our fixed position. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about that.
I could get in trouble with that. I'm trying to remember something. Hang on. Actually, I'm going to pull this up because it seems significant. BMC Dropbox. Funny, I can't just remember. Chance. Here we go. Okay. Page 2. There it is. In the end of the Loving Kindness Sutra. Cancel that. I'm just going to recite or read the last half. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views. The pure-hearted one having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. What is that thing about being not holding to fixed views? It's interesting the way sometimes a comment from an influential person changes one's life. And I would say that Ajahn Sumedho, when I did that retreat with him way back when he said, love means there's room for everything, it set off a chain reaction that persists. There's room for everything. Now, love isn't liking. And loving doesn't mean that if we opened our heart in love to another, to someone we're close around. Hang on, I'm going to move your picture up to near the camera. Hang on. There we go. That's better, I think. Love and forgiveness, for that matter, don't mean that we ever speak to someone again. Doesn't mean we don't call the police. Doesn't mean we don't work deeply to get them out of political office. What it speaks to is the inner attitude of I can't get the word out, of aversion and funny, I'm not feeling very bright this morning. I know what I'd like to say as an intuition, but the words are not very clear. I'm going to try this. Again, another quote. The great way is not difficult for those who are not attached to their preferences. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to know oneness, then only cease to cherish opinions. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. The third Chinese patriarch of Zen. So, What if it's true that there's only one of us here on the earth? That every single person is you. Every single dog, every single cat, every single cow and weasel and possum and tree and every fish in the ocean. What if what the mystics have said again and again from every tradition is true? How then could we have enemies? And how do we have enemies? We have stories about them. We have this remarkable split in our culture. It's actually a split around the world of people of one worldview and another worldview. And we hate each other. But in my understanding of Dharma practice, as soon as one finds hatred, that sets off all the warning bells. It's like, I'm off track here. I have lost the path, or gosh, I never quite found the path because I still have enemies, or I still have people in the past that I haven't forgiven. I still cherish resentments against people. And the more that the practice ripens, in my experience, the smallest resentment is painful. And so, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, learning, we practice and we open more and more to, oh, it's this too. It doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves. It doesn't mean we don't build fences. Though there's some really interesting, horrible things we're doing around the world in terms of fences now with migrants. What is that about? How do we make sense of that with love? So is that any help, my dear?
Well, it was a little broader than I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking more in terms of just more directly with individual relationships and maybe more local.
Uh-huh. Well, how about this? My, quote, primary relationship is with an amazing human being named Jennifer. I've done this marriage thing several times. It's become more clear to me than ever before that to love someone is to let them be who they are. To give them, to offer them sovereignty in their own life. And that loving then is not that codependent feeling, it's not that at all. It's love and wisdom are very close synonyms, I think. And so anytime we discover ourselves suffering because someone else is not what we want them to be, the opportunity to become more loving is there in realizing, so I'm dissatisfied. What's causing this dissatisfaction? Is it actually the other person, or is it my inability to accept things the way they are?
Well, I think it's also going back to what you said in meditation about fixed position.
Oh yes, I completely lost track of that piece. How funny!
But I'm just thinking, if there's a conflict, then
Yeah.
it's usually because I'm holding tightly onto some position,
Yes.
whether I know it or not.
Yes, and all positions are destructive in the end. Because in the end, we have to let go of everything. Even the position of I am this body, that's a very tight position that eventually we will have to relinquish. Thank you for reminding me that. I completely lost it. fixed position. The attitudes toward things. I mean, I have people in my extended world who really want to argue about politics and send me videos and things, and I don't even watch the videos because it's always somebody's fixed position. And I'd rather be loving than that. Thanks for your patience with my meandering.
Good morning, Robert. It's David here.
David there.
Hi. Hello, Robert there. Good morning, Sangha. So on the notion of the interconnectedness of all life you're mentioning earlier, I read something recently that said that human beings share 60% of our DNA genome with those of a banana, which means that every person in the room and every person on the earth is more than half banana. Not bananas. That's something else. But which is interesting, I think. So I mean, we're more than half banana.
Right. And I forget. I don't remember things like this very well, but there's something with our similarity genetically with the apes is like 97%. And then across the fantasy that we have of races, the difference is you can't find it. And
it's 65% for a fruit fly too.
Fruit flies,
Yeah,
with their big chromosomes.
Yep, 65% for fruit fly, 60% banana. For chimpanzees, it's more like 96%.
Yeah. We do have to. But there's a rabbit hole I'm hesitant to go down. But we create these stories about people. I got in a lot of trouble one time. Well, it wasn't really much trouble, but I was on my way home from Canada, and my American passport had expired. And so I tried to enter on my Canadian passport, and they picked me up for further screening, and I went in, and this guy was so gruff and nasty. And I just kept, and I was on my way home from a I was on my way home from a 14-day retreat. So I was all full of love and at ease, and it didn't matter if I missed my flight. And this guy kept being really grumpy with me. And at one point, I had the stupidity to say, I was born in Canada. I lived there for 21 years. And then I traveled the world for 5 years. And I've lived here ever since 1978. And I go back and forth. I work in Canada and teach retreats and things. And and I said, the border doesn't seem that important. And I said this to a man who defends the border for a living. Oh man, the shit hit the fan. It was quite wild. In the end, they let me go. And I also said at one point, I have a website. I've been here a long time. And anyway, you have my picture on your computer, don't you? And he blew his lid on that. Don't you tell me how to do my job. And he apologized, though. When I went to leave, he went to some other guy, and he came in, you get this, you got to get a new passport in 6 months or whatever. And he did try to apologize. I don't do this job a lot. This is, it was a wonderful experience of being so loving and unperturbable that it was fun. I look back on it with warmth. God, I'm talking a lot this morning. Get in trouble. Gray-haired, white, older man talks too much, therefore is bad. That's a fixed position.
Robert, so if you dyed your hair, it would be fine, right?
Oh shit, you're bringing that up again.
No, if you dyed your hair, you wouldn't be a gray-haired
Oh,
man.
I see.
Talk too
Oh,
much. It's easy to solve.
how about if it
And
was bright
get mad.
blue?
That would be
Would
great.
that
You'd
get
look
me off the
cool.
hook?
It would look really nice anyway.
What if you don't have hair?
Uh-oh.
Paint it.
Then just age and male is enough to make you. Of course, I'm making light of something of great importance, right? There is such a powerful thing that happens around privilege, of which I have tons. So, any other thoughts? Anything anybody would like to share?
Good morning, it's Denise.
Hello, Denise, mother of sheep, of lambs.
You baby, yeah, of many things. And actually today, that's what I wanted to say, since we were sharing about sharing genetics and whatnot. Today, I'm this bag of seed. So this is all seed of a tiny little few millimeters, is seed of an endangered plant.
Oh.
That is only found in the Willamette Valley. And there are more seeds in this bag than there are plants in the world of this species.
Wow.
And so, I don't know, it just seems like sometimes it's a good reminder about just how precious life is, and maybe not just us, but if we all are one, like, geez, these little babies.
What is
and
the
I'm
name
putting them
of
on the
this
ground
plant?
Next week.
What is the name of
Willamette
this plant?
daisy, Erigeron decumbens, variety decumbens. It's this small little purple daisy. Yeah. So I don't know. It just seemed appropriate, and it's what I'm actually doing today. So.
Wow. And will all those seeds go back to will all those seeds go back to the earth, or will some of them be saved somewhere?
Yeah, there's 9 pounds someplace else that will go out other places, but these are going into an experiment to figure out the best ways to get them out to be the most successful.
Uh-huh. It's very touching to me.
So yes, they will all go into the ground and become babies.
Hmm. Coming back to you, Kathy, one of the lessons that I learned in the many communities, one Sangha training I did over 5 weekends. There's a set of rules. I forget them. They're in my packet somewhere. But among the ways to carry out meetings, among the attitudes to have, is they suggest presume that every perspective of every person is true. And so when I meet someone who is of a completely differing position, to have in mind, wow, perhaps both of these views on this circumstance are completely correct. So how can I soften? How can I recognize my own fixed position? It's like, oh, this person's stupid, right? God, they're really coming, blah blah blah, and to realize, wait, I have a perspective on this. My conditioning is this. Let me see if I can inhabit this other person's conditioning and perspective, and learn to see the world in that way too. And that's an operationalizing of the no fixed position. That's one of the many reasons why it's important to hear everyone's voice.
Hi, Robert. This is Rob. I'm
Rob,
with
hello.
you. Hello. I'm with you for about 90% of that journey.
Uh-huh.
But after a certain point, you're in like moral equivalency territory. And there is some stuff going on in the human experience that I'm absolutely not in a position to validate that view. Like some of the stuff that Taliban does with women in Afghanistan. I'm sorry, I can't live in their view.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that makes sense to me, and there are some circumstances where one might put one's life on the line, and there is a deeper spiritual truth in which there's no opposition. And funny, I'm thinking of different associations. I watched a really interesting interview with a young American. He was 40-ish, I think. He was a former Green Beret, and he was one of the Dalai Lama's bodyguards. And he traveled around with the Dalai Lama, and there are layers of security around the Dalai Lama. And he was in this, like the second layer. The closest layer in are Tibetan, really powerful bodyguards. But anyway, he was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, "So you've been training in Buddhism for 25 years, and blah blah blah." And he said, "Would you harm another person to protect His Holiness?" And he said, "Well, of course." And then the interviewer said, "Well, would you kill someone in order to protect His Holiness?" And he said he thought of it, of course, and his response was, "Yes, of course I could. Yes, of course I would. And I would attempt to do it with absolutely no rancor." So I believe that's a no fixed position perspective. I'd have my job. I wouldn't let evil happen. But I would understand. I would do my best to understand the motivations of another person.
And my own motivations, my own volition.
My own, yeah, exactly. Nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm. I'm tempted to say one more thing on this, which is, I used to stay upset about things like the Taliban. And I watched a 5-minute video of ISIS committing atrocities that really stuck with me for a long time. Maybe it was less than 5 minutes. And I've discovered I'm really not interested in staying upset all the time over things I have no influence over. And so I endeavor to hold no fixed position about how bad they are. That I just don't have to go there. I don't want to go there. I'd rather be able to go into a spacious consciousness and be effective in the relationships in which I have actual agency and where I can be functional. But there's a very common thing in the world, it's believed to be a very good thing, which is to hold strong positions about all kinds of things. And the political world is full of that. And who am I to know? We all must find our way with this.
Robert,
I hear
it's
a
Bee.
voice. Hello, Bee.
It's
There
Bee.
you are. You're way up there at the top of my screen. Hi.
Yeah, that's where you are too. So this has come up before, and I just wanted to check something with you because I think I understand what you're saying about trying not to dwell in that place of constant anger. But isn't there also a space where we should know, we should be aware? I worry that sometimes when you say that, there's a corollary of, so let's just block that. Let's not know about that. Let's not dwell there at all. And I struggle with that because I feel some kind of moral responsibility, if that's the right term, to know before I choose to try to expand the way I see the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wonder if that's one of those places where both are true. It's funny when you, in this kind of territory, I'm watching how this mind throws up previous thoughts, previous responses to this kind of issue, and the stories that support it. So here's one. Jack Cornfield was a monk in Thailand. He was in Ubon Ratchathani, which is very close to the Cambodian border. And Ubon was a small village when Achan Chah went there. And it's now a city of 2.5 million people. And it became that during the Vietnam War because Ubon was one of the 2 airports that American bombers bombed the bejeebies out of Cambodia and Vietnam. And they could hear the bombs in Cambodia at night. So here's Jack doing years of meditation practice, and he had friends coming through on their way to Hanoi, right, which was illegal, but they were going to help the people of Hanoi because their country was dropping bombs on and killing tens of thousands of people. And Jack got feeling... And what they said to him was, here you are sitting on your ass here in the monastery. There's work to be done. And Jack got a little bit unsettled by it. He went to Achan Chah, who said, there must be places of sanity where we go beyond greed, hatred, and delusion. And then Jack said more about this experience and that there was a time for him to withdraw for years. And then he came back into the world and made a huge difference and affected the lives of millions, I would say. And if we stay always engaged, we never have the chance to go quiet enough to have the experience of to have true mystical experience. It's not so likely. So there's something about letting go of, here, a possibility, I've done this and I've supported people in doing this, to take a 3-month news fast. To really give it up, or give it up for a week completely. and see what life is like. And it turns out that life goes on quite. And just had another story pop in. The Falklands War. You remember the Falklands War? The Argentinians said, hey, these islands off our coast are not really British. They are Argentinian. They're called the Malvinas. They're not the Falklands. And they decided that they were going to take them back. And Britain, which is, of course, a failing imperial power, fading like we are, like America is, decided they weren't going to put up with this. And there was a whole uproar, and they got the fleet ready, and they set off, and there was all this music, and they were off to defeat the infidels in the South. And I was really into it. I would listen to the news on my car, and I was really it was exciting and scary, and I got to Ruth's place, and I asked her, what do you think about the war? And she said, what war? And I said, well, the British, and I explained a little bit. And she said, oh, darling, I don't pay any attention to that. They're always having a war. I've lived through the war. And I focus on the war within people, and reducing the battles of greed, hatred, and ignorance right here. That was another very interesting perspective, that she's very engaged in anti-war activity, but she's doing it at the level of personal transformation. So where do we find the ground in it? I don't know. I know that I have a lot of I. I find it a lot. I find the news and the positions of the news to be a lot less interesting now. And I do know, I carried out an experiment not so long ago, a year or so. I watched only Fox News for a day. I didn't watch much, but I did about an hour. It was hard. And I realized, well, of course people hold the positions they do, because this is the information they have. And I don't want to be exposed to the polarization and the blaming and the So you have what feels like a moral imperative to stay informed. So then you could experiment with not being informed for a while, and you can also live with that conditioning that's important to you. So therefore, why not do it? Why not mindfully follow that? There's other things that you do too that are particular to you. So you have an interest in that, then why not? The challenge would be, or a challenge would be, then if other people should be the same. I should, but so should you. I should keep in touch with the news, but so should you. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. Goodness, it's 8:24. Time flies. Anybody have anything else you'd like to share? I'll try to be quiet. Mm-hmm. Let's part from each other on Yashakur. How exquisitely the One is manifesting to me in this moment as you. So it's an acknowledgement of both the non-dual where everything's one, and also, wow, the universe took birth as you, and you're manifesting to me. So please unmute, and we'll bring our hands to our heart. This is a practice, just in case you haven't done this with me. It's from Islam, the 101 beautiful names of God, one of which is Ya Shakur. How exquisitely the one, the mystery, the God manifests in this moment to me as you. And so we take our hands to our hearts and pick a picture. And then pick a picture or a name. And then we go, Ya Shakur. We'll do it 9 times. Ya Shakur. 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 Pausing. Stop.
Yeah.
How about we do the gesture and we say the name of someone on the screen that we're looking at? It would be like, not good?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, kill it.
Everybody.
Ya Shakur. Everybody.
Shakur.
The one.
For everyone.
The one.
Everyone.
All right.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Happy trails,
Everybody.
folks. See you
Goodbye.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Here we go. The leap to hyperspace.